Africa is now a major frontline battleground in the global fight against terrorism. In recent years, Islamist militant groups like Boko Haram and Al-Shabaab have terrorized countries on both coasts of the continent. The U.S. Africa Command, or AFRICOM, is working through multinational exercises and military-to-military engagements to help strengthen relationships with its African partner nations to help build the defense capability and capacity of their security forces. VOA Pentagon correspondent Carla Babb is standing by live via Skype in Brussels, Belgium, where she spoke Tuesday with AFRICOM Staff Commander, U.S. Army General David Rodriguez, and other AFRICOM officials. Carla, how are you?
I'm great. How are you, Vincent?
Fine. Now tell us first what the general had to say about the fight against terrorism in Africa.
Well, Vincent, the general was very concerned about the growing threats in Africa, and he wanted to stress that the entire globe is looking more toward Africa and how they can help. I actually learned from one of his deputies, his spokesman, Colonel Mark Shield, that the United States has actually looked at about 11 different locations for a potential second base in Africa. As you know, Djibouti is where the United States is based now, and then the AFRICOM has their headquarters right here in Europe. But the possibility is out there that a second base may be needed. I tried to press him and say, okay, well, where have you been looking? What 11 locations are there? And he wouldn't tell me, but he would tell me that one of the locations is not Nigeria, despite all the increased efforts between the United States and Nigeria to fight Boko Haram. He said that that's not where they're looking at, that there are several different areas, and that the Chad, the group of five, Chad, Mali, Niger, Nigeria, and Benin, when they start to join this group, will be there to fight, and the United States is going to remain as a support, not necessarily needing a base there. But pretty big news that the United States would even be considering a second base in Africa, because this is something that's not really been talked about before.
Indeed. And what was the general and the other officials doing there in Brussels today?
Well, the general is here in Europe and here in Brussels because the United States and the EU are close allies on anything that goes on in Africa. He was explaining to me just how active the European Union is in Africa. He said about 88% of the military budget of the European Union is in Africa, 84% of the military personnel, and 10 of the 17 global operations that the EU has are right in the African continent. So whenever the United States wants to do something to help Africans, they first talk to the Africans, but then they're also at the same time talking to the European Union.
And I thought it's rather interesting you're saying that the focus is not just Nigeria, but the U.S. along with the Europeans are looking at all these other places where militancy is growing. And that is a different approach, right?
Oh, yes. The general even talked about Somalia. He said, yes, you may have seen an uptick in United States activity, but that's because the Somali forces are starting to get stronger and stronger. And as they perform more, he says that the United States is going to be a support role there. He said the United States has been conducting several training exercises with the Nigerians. He mentioned that a 3rd battalion of Nigerians just graduated, and also some of their intelligence corps is being trained by the United States to help them get better intelligence and surveillance against Boko Haram. And then he could not leave out ISIS, the Islamic State in Libya. He said that there are several African nations that have been focusing on protecting the outside of Libya, Tunisia being one of them, Chad being another, making sure that the Islamic State fighters cannot get in or out of Libya, and then focusing on the European countries. The Italians have been huge, trying to stop the Islamic State there. The United States trying to stop the Islamic State there. The U.S. does have a presence in Libya, not a military presence per se, but they are there trying to fight the Islamic State, and they are trying to work with the government to form a strong foothold, because it's essential for the government to be able to build its own army before and to combine those militias that are in Libya before the Islamic State can be pushed out.
Indeed, and we saw that commitment from the U.S. and the Europeans to help get the government there some equipment. Thanks a lot, Carla. Thanks for reporting for us from Brussels. That is VOA Pentagon correspondent Carla Babb reporting live via Skype from Brussels.